My name is Matt Sility. I chair the MFA in Comics program here at California College of the Arts. So tonight, I'm going to introduce the person who will be introducing the person who we are all here to see. Justin Hall is going to be in conversation with our special guest tonight. If you don't know who Justin Hall is, he is this big, handsome man standing right over my right shoulder. So, in addition to being one of our full-time faculty, Justin Hall is a comics scholar, a comics creator, and a comics innovator in terms of creating things like the Queer Comics Symposium, and now he's working on a documentary, which is going to be amazing. I can't wait to see it. But you always say, what do you always say people are? Lovely and talented? Yeah. The lovely and talented Justin Hall.
I met Gabby Rivera a few months ago and was instantly smitten. I got a huge lesbro crush on her immediately, because she's super talented and thinks deeply and passionately about issues around creative expression and representation. Gabby is a Bronx-born queer Latinx writer who's currently residing in Oakland, and her debut YA novel, Juliet Takes was critically acclaimed and led to her job writing the adventures of America Chavez, the company's first queer Latinx character to headline their own book. She's also written several other short pieces for various comics and prose collections, and travels the country and internationally, speaking about her experiences as a QTPOC writer and LGBTQ youth advocate, and the importance of centering joy in narratives of Latinx people and people of color, which we're going to talk about joy. So let's bring on Gabby Rivera.
Nerdy stuff. Honestly, I feel like I was just a nerd, but I wasn't a nerd enough to have a specific interest in something. I was just one eyebrow, all glasses, chubby cheeks, so it was definitely that kind of thing. I mean, I was really good at reading. Whereas some people are good at sports, you know what I mean? I was good at reading, so just kind of general, quiet, evangelical nerd.
So were you reading comics when you were a kid? You were reading different kinds of stuff. Were you reading comics as well when you were a kid?
I feel like I'm gonna disappoint everyone. Was I reading comics? Okay, so my parents were reading comics, and they were telling me about their big stash of comics in the 50s and how they would go for a nickel and buy the Fantastic Four, and that was the most embarrassing thing to me. So I was oh, they're reading comics? I'm gonna read Goosebumps, I'm gonna read trashy teenage thrillers from Christopher Pike. I'm reading everything that is not that. Yeah. Comics didn't really come into my life until I came out. When I was 18 or whatever, and I needed just more stories about gay people and LGBTQ folks, and that was when there's this bookstore in New York, a feminist lesbian bookstore called Blue Stockings, and and in the back they have everywhere is gay stuff, right? It's they don't care, everywhere's gay, but towards the back I remember there was the graphic novel section, and that was where I first read what's that, Dykes to Remember? Dykes to Watch Out For, by Alison Bechdel, right? And I was just oh shit. Yeah, and at the same time, no, please, because I'm nervous, so you're good right here, backing me up. And also Love and Rockets. Yes. When I was 18, 19, someone passed that to me, and that really hit. I was because it was wow, not only are these folks Latinos and Mexican and stuff, but they're punk rock, badass dykes, in a rock band. Hopi and Maggie were on again, off again lovers, and like fine, like Maggie was like one of my original crushes, like she's just all, anyway, like beautiful, right? And so it was those two specifically.
So you said you grew up in an evangelical family as well.
I don't know.
So I mean, oftentimes families, really religious families, are kind of against comics and against kind of nerdy shit. So your family clearly wasn't. Like that wasn't an issue for them.
Yeah.
Okay. So how? I mean, do elements of your religious upbringing and stuff kind of come up now when you're writing and your storytelling?
Oh my gosh. Not for anything that I have put out thus far. I'm working on something that kind of explores like evangelical end of the world stuff and the impacts of that on like you as a kid, and like how that like can sometimes mean that you are a hella anxious adult that is always like, oh, the demon's coming. But what I have worked on is kind of the ways that like being brought up in such a strict household. And when I say evangelical, I mean like holy rolling, speaking in tongues, like getting caught with the spirit, falling on the ground, like grew up believing that the end of the world was around every corner, demons are gonna pop up out of the floor, like literal, not a joke, like that was my upbringing, right? And what that also is like, I felt like it was a way to kind of like, it made me like afraid of myself, and it made me like really afraid of the world around me. So there's a lot of stuff that I put into like the America comics that is more like, hey, follow your spirit. Like you are whole, you are good, make your way in the world. To kind of like be the soft guiding voice that I always had wanted to hear in church and life in my head. So
you've even got like kind of a creation myth here too in America Chavez.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, look at this. So talk to me about what
Can y'all
this.
see that?
Yeah. So this is pretty remarkable. It's a creation myth with like two female, two goddesses that kind of come together to create the world.
Listen, I always wondered how people taught the stuff, right? That's amazing. Okay. Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, okay, right? So. Marvel had already created America Chavez, right? Like I didn't make her up, and they did it in a way where it was like it has a lot of pros for her character. She's a woman, she's Latina, she's already a lesbian. Nope, it didn't come. Okay. She has two moms, so she's a queer kin. So Marvel, the creators, they did good work with her, and at the same time there was like a lot missing, right? Like she was Latina but had no country or island of origin, right? She had two moms, but they're dead, because we love dead moms in stories, you know what I mean? Just get them bitches out the way. That's what it feels like sometimes, right? Like, God, I don't want to write a mom, and I don't want to write someone that reminds me of my ex-wife, you know what I mean? Like, it's that thing. And so in my mind, I was like, well, why do I have to like have a racialized colonial understanding of myself in outer fucking space? Like, am I allowed for 1 second to imagine myself beyond the mess that other people have created? And some people feel like that's like a dangerous way to think, like maybe like a white supremacist way to want to not have color or whatever. But for me, it was more like, God, I'm fucking tired of thinking of myself through like the rape of Native folks and the enslavement of African and Black people. Like, what if like we just were able to have space without like white supremacy? And so in my mind, I was like, how cool would it be if two like gorgeous Black and brown entities, right, like met each other in the vast universe and fell so deeply in love that they manifested a planet. Damn. Like it's always so centered in like, in order to create something, it feels like it has to be centered in taking something from somebody else, or it has to like exist within the like limits of patriarchy and the like very gendered and binary understanding of our bodies and stuff. And like I feel like when people talk about space, that's the same language they use when they talk about it. Like, we're landing our device on Mars. It's like, did you fucking ask Mars? Did you ask Mars? Like, you know, no, you don't. You just land there and you take it and you do what you want. Anyway, so this was like a magical moment for me. And yeah, I wanted to like, if America Chavez is this fierce, bold, badass babe, then she should come from somewhere incredible, right? Like, or at least half of her should come from somewhere incredible.
It does really like, it made me think a lot about science fiction, kind of reading the America Chavez series and thinking about science fiction and superheroes as a genre, which are, you know, and this idea of kind of Latinx culture in space, right? Where we're so used to thinking of a culture as like specific to history and time and cultural context within our world. But then to take those tropes and be like, okay, well, we can have a Latinx identity. There's one point when America says like, you know, soy Latina, soy America, soy Fuertona.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which is the alien race.
Fuertona.
Yeah.
So that's like planet of the strong, badass women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's creating not only like a character who is Latinx in space, but rather reinventing the genre and idiom around it, around that kind of identity.
Yeah. I'm sure like a ton of people are probably like, damn, that's terrible. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't take our identities outside of the context that like we have forged ourselves from, right? And so like I totally get that too. I just think there's like a little bit of room to do both, at least for me. I want to be able to like offer a little bit of like freedom in your imagination and your creativity, right? I feel like, you know, for every kid of color, right, that is definitely going to be doing identity work, like just being in your body and just being who you are is like political identity work, right? And so if that kid then wants to create their own planet and have a race of, a species of people from somewhere else, but still be able to hold on to like whatever reminds them of their island, whatever reminds them of their home, like, I feel like that should be allowed, you know? And at the same time, so many of us still do that political work where we make the comics and tell the stories that are very much about like how and why we left the islands, or like, you know what I mean? So it's never just like an easy choice to be like, and it's never like being like, oh, I want to make this devoid of race. It's more just like, how can I allow my imagination to like roam free and kind of like build new worlds, you know?
Well, you know, because, you know, white people do that all the time. Like project whiteness into space and just call it kind of default, right? Default humanity, right?
They never have to be from Kansas, you know what I mean? Like they just got to be white out in space.
So here you've got soy Fuertona, soy Latina, soy America.
Oh, that's a good panel on joy too, by the way.
So talk to us maybe this part of this idea of kind of imagining a kind of using genre, right, to kind of imagine different identities in other situations. Is that joyful for you? Is that part of that process?
I mean, yeah, all of it is. I mean, this is a joyful experience, right? Like being able to like tell stories and write comics and just make this kind of like the stuff I think about in my head come to life is joyful. But one of the things writing for Marvel and writing like a superhero comic, I was pushed constantly to like have the action, right? Like she's got to fight, no matter what, she's got to fight. And I would literally write emails and be like, does there have to be a fight? Like, isn't she tired? Like, you know, like, and also like your understanding of justice isn't always my like understanding of justice, right? Like, so there's this, as supportive and amazing as like the editorial team was, because they definitely were, it was just like, they were like, hey, but still, it's a Marvel comic, she's got to fight, somebody's fighting, you know what I mean? So with this top panel, the one before actually with the, that one, she has like gone through the ringer, right? Like America has gone to the ancestral plane. She's learned about her mothers that passed away. She's learned about why her family had had to leave their home planet. She also learned that her grandma kind of abandoned her. And so she's gone through it, right? And so I was like, I'm gonna take this page, this panel, this like pretty much a third of the page, and just let her rest on a cloud. Because we all need those moments, especially I feel like, queer people of color, women of color, especially, like, we are meant to be like forever strong. Like, never need a rest, never need a battery, and if you're resting, that means that you're just cooking for somebody and making sure that that's a calm activity, right? That's how you rest. And so I was just like, no. She's gonna take a minute, right, and internalize this. And also it's really cool because a lot of times young people that have read this will come up to me with this panel and be like, I hadn't ever thought about my joy before. So this is wild.
So I also wanted, one of the phrases that you use a lot, you also start off Juliet Takes a Breath with the same phrase as pa'lante, right? So I first heard that in Cuba, but it's, you know, and I was like all cocky because I thought I knew Spanish, and I got to Cuba and I was like, what is this that they're speaking? It's like completely different, you know, Caribbean Spanish. So talk to me about what pa'lante, what it means to you.
Yeah, I mean, well, pa'lante, I just heard that all the time growing up, right? Like Puerto Rican from the Bronx, so everything is like pa'lante, sigue pa'lante, like to keep going, right? It's like a contraction of para adelante, and it's like to move forward. And at first I just thought it was like something that my family said, that Puerto Ricans say. But like politically, historically, it's used by, I mean, from the context I understand, right, as a Puerto Rican, it's been used as like a rallying cry. So when the Young Lords rallied in the Bronx, right? Young Lords, if you never heard of them, were just like a group of young Puerto Ricans living in the Bronx while it was literally burning to the ground because the city didn't care. And the landlords literally burned the buildings to the ground so the Puerto Ricans wouldn't move in. Like when all that was going on, the Young Lords mobilized and their phrase was like, pa'lante, siempre pa'lante, like always onward Puerto Rican family, like we must always continue moving forward. And so I just feel like there's always, you know, like there's always room for like a huepa, you know what I mean? Like there's always room for a pa'lante, like there's always a moment for Juliet. It is like the second you open the book, that's in like kind of the dedication, like, you know, to just move forward. And then for America, like, this is like literally a moment where she is about to learn her history in the ancestral plane. And her grandmother is like, are you ready? Hell yeah, she is. Yeah.
By the way, I love the grandmother's costume. It's like full on like, luchadora, but it's like, and it really reminds me, it references for me the, we were talking before about Love and Rockets, right? So you've got this, like, right? Yeah.
Y'all do not play here. The references. This one in particular is in my house. I have these books. I love this. I love this part of Love and Rockets, particularly because, and we were just talking about this, where there's no older women in comics. And the most head-busting ass people sometimes are the older women. They don't mess around. It's older women that I've seen chase sexual male predators out of my tia's house one time. It's older women that are set the whole damn family like on the right path. And so when I saw this in Love and Rockets, I was just like, look at her, she's got a Titi's body too, you know what I mean? Like, it's amazing. And so with America, I was like, damn, they gave her to me and she don't have nobody, you know? And for me, the people that I literally think about every day that I miss the most are my grandmas. I miss my grandmas more than any people in the world. And it was like the strength in them, their fortitude, their like, ability to take on anything, like leaving the island, coming to New York, finding jobs, trading identities for papers and you know, like all this stuff, right? Like, and so, anyway, I can get on a tangent, but that's why I had to give her a luchador stomping, like, space grandma, you know what I mean?
So it's interesting, like this concept of giving America, who is an alien, roots, right? Because I also think of how America's origin kind of references both like classic superhero stuff, right? So references Superman, clearly, right? Because she's coming from a planet that's been destroyed, she's an orphan, kind of an alien on this planet, right? Very literally, but still kind of dressed in the flag. But it's also referencing Wonder Woman, right? Because she's also coming from a planet of all women. and which is the utopian parallel, which is like very much like Paradise Island, right? So it's kind of cribbing from all these like wonderful superhero tropes, but then making it her own. So were you thinking about those kind of tropes, or like how to reimagine America with her own identity, her own origin story?
I wasn't thinking about those tropes per se. Like, I was just like, this is wild. You guys are coming out the utopian parallel, like what? And then they destroyed it, and it was like all this women.
So that was in the original.
That was in the original. Like, they created that. They made that, and that, like, even some of the things in America, like her white paramedic girlfriend, like that was already in there, and I was. That's why I broke them up. Anyway. What was the question?
So what did you contribute to her origin?
Oh yeah, no, but with America, I was like, well, okay, so she came from this place, right? And her moms, right, used their bodies to like seal the universe from like imploding, essentially. And so that seal also disintegrated, destroyed America's home planet. But baby, like 5 or 6 year old America, like toddles out of the atmosphere just in the nick of time to survive. So in my head, I was like, damn, we got a 5-year-old just floating around the universe. Like, what does that really look like, So for me, it was like, okay, well, if you're like a scared brown girl, what do? You find the people that look like you and hope they take you in, you know what I mean? And so that's why in certain places, like, that's why in like, I think number 2 or 3, we have her kind of landing with different families. And then with the grandma, I wanted to give her like a big, robust, wild, beautiful origin story and like have a big, beautiful planet for her. And I was thinking of it through the lens of like the comics that I actually am familiar with and like what I wish they had in them. And so, yeah. I wanted just like a planet, similar. I guess I kind of wanted like a similar style for Planeta Fortuna, where it was like started by women and kind of like insulated from some of the madness everywhere else.
In conjunction with the really fantastical elements, you also have these very more grounded kind of moments. I was just thinking of, so this is Sotomayor University, which is amazing, and which is this kind of interstellar sort of like existing between planes, yes. Kind of super university, right? Mm-hmm. And which has like a department of radical women indigenous resistance or something, yeah. Which is amazing. But you also have these really specific moments, I think it's here, where, so here Prodigy is, America's been captured by the baddie in disguise, right? Yeah. So, and then Prodigy, her buddy Prodigy here is basically saying to her as she's being captured, yes, calm, cool, Chavez, forget her, it's just me and you, are you okay? And then she speaks back and says, yes, calm, cool, no fuel for them. And this is like really textbook stuff about resistance and protest. Like if you're gonna be arrested at a protest, this is what you do for each other, right? You like ignore the people who are like trying to shout you down. It's you and me, are you okay? Like that kind of, these are very specific steps to take in protest. So even though this is a very like fantastical story, you've got these really like grounded like tips for protest and for resistance. I mean, were you thinking that in those terms?
Yeah, I mean, specifically for that arc, like, I finally, listen, y'all, like the first issue of America is like my first ever comic in the whole world, right? So I literally am like I have been learning as I hit the ground running, like terrified the whole way, right? And so by the time I got to, what is this, like issue 9 or 8 or 9, something like that, I was like, oh my God, I finally can almost like I can stand up on the surfboard, you know what I mean? Like, and so I felt more comfortable to take on something a little more realistic, right? And more specific to what folks were experiencing, right? So I was writing this around the time that like the Muslim travel bans were coming into effect, and just like this idea of being able to like really put like literal borders in place for people to be able to like come and go as they please, you know what I'm saying? And so for this, I was like, well, what if this happened in a school, right, where a corporate entity that has like political and like malicious undertones takes over the school and then stops America from doing the things she does best. I didn't mention that she's so strong she can punch portals into other dimensions. So now she's a Latina that doesn't need a passport, ID, or papers to go any damn where. Yeah. And so that would be the first thing that the corporate entity would want to take from her, is that ability. And so they do, right? They come up with a device that's stronger than she is, and they got her all locked up. And in the moment, right, people always have this idea of like, but not people, right? But I feel like mainstream media likes to portray students and protesters as like reckless ass people that don't know what they're doing. And that's like first line of bullshit, because it's like you've never met anybody more prepared than like someone who's going to protest on the ground. You know what I mean? Like putting their body at risk. And so for this scene between them, I was like, no, like Prodigy and her and America are really good friends. They love each other, they're family. And so if she's getting arrested, he's not gonna be like riling up and, you know, he is gonna just care about her. And that's kind of something like that I felt like was super important, you know what I mean? And yeah, like didn't have to be a big deal, just like a moment. And also I feel like I'm always trying to give a little nod to like queer kids of color, right? We're gonna be in these situations together, so like this is a little something you can do. If you know your friend is freaking out or you're freaking out, you can take a moment to have that eye contact and to take that breath together, no matter if you're handcuffed or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Yeah, I appreciate you picking that up and out.
And here too, you're talking about Prodigy is here kind of speaking about what's going on with the school and talking about this stuff around surveillance, are you wanting a surveillance university? And a lot of this is about surveillance state stuff versus surveillance versus security, security versus freedom, right? So, which is very much in the public discourse right now.
Right.
So you were kind of jumping into that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, at first, like, Prodigy is, and by the way, like, if I had more experience, I would have done so much more with Prodigy. That's one of my things where I'm like, I really see in myself that I don't want to say like I failed this character, but I didn't provide him enough material to work with and give him enough of a personal like arc, right? So there's that I wish, if I could do it again, he would have so much more. But I essentially from the beginning, he's like Mr. Genius. Like he is a genius. He's got his own tech, like the school has their surveillance, but Prodigy has his own counter surveillance, you know? And he's just checking in on like, you know, the corporate entity, and he can see all the stuff that's going on. But when he sees the way that surveillance is used to kind of kill everybody, at the end, he's like, no, let's take this all down. Like, can we build a community of trust? What does it look like to have a campus where we're not constantly like surveilling each other? How do we protect each other? How do we do that? And yeah, I just feel like there's gotta be other ways, right? Like maybe I'm just completely idealistic, and I'm happy with that too, because there should be other ideas out in the world, right? Like if I'm the one person out there that's like, hey, we shouldn't be surveilling each other, it's kind of annoying and gross, you know, then I'm good with it.
I don't think you're alone. That's it. So one of the things I also wanted to talk about was the character design here of America, right?
Yeah.
So you worked with initially with Joe Quinones, right?
Yeah.
He was amazing, an incredible artist. And I want to have you talk about how the collaboration went, but specifically, this character design is amazing because it's not a standard superhero thing in the sense that it's not one. She doesn't have one costume, right? She's got all these different kinds of outfits.
She does.
And they all fierce.
I was like hard femme all the way, yeah.
Right, amazing.
Let's do it.
And always with similar colors and similar designs. You can tell it's her and it's her look, but it's not one costume. The other thing is also that she's got kind of real features. She's got a strong nose. She's got hips. She's not. Whereas oftentimes female superheroes are just drawn as these kind of like caricatures. So were you part of that visual design at all, or how did you work with Joe Quinones on this stuff?
I do. Okay. Are you posting this online? Yeah. Okay.
It's
Okay. All right.
It's totally
Okay, so Marvel is Marvel, right? So like they're just kind of like, you're gonna, here's who you're gonna work with, right? And that was great. I think that Joe Quinones had very much like a specific idea of how America is gonna look, and I think that he like executed her design, especially in the first couple of issues, like so flawlessly. She is like chiseled, she is tough. I think that like there was so much work I had to do on my end to just kind of like play catch up, right? That there wasn't as much collaboration as there probably could have been, or as there would have been probably like on a more indie comic. So I will say that this actual cover in particular, I had asked for the gaze to be a little higher, but my notes didn't get there in time before like the publishing of it. So there was moments where like I wouldn't see the covers until like the morning of, or like I wouldn't get pages to them until like the day that they needed to, like, you know what I mean? So there was a lot of tricky navigation with America, and that's why as you watch and read through the series, we have a ton of artists on folks that kind of like took 3 pages, 6 pages, 4 pages at a time, just so that we could hit our publishing deadlines and stuff. So yeah, with Joe, I think that what he really got across was able to like announce her with her look as a firm and fierce superhero. Yeah.
So talk about what was it like to collaborate with an artist for the first time after coming from a world of YA fiction prose where you were the creator of your own universe entirely.
Yeah.
And editors too, like, oh my god, yeah.
It's wild. Yo, raise your hand if you can draw. You're brilliant. You're brilliant. How do you do that? Oh my god. If you can draw, I need you to walk out of here at the end of the show and be like, I'm a fucking genius. Like, that's it, just straight out, because I cannot. And the first time, like, for issue number 7, Jen Bartle's got some pages on there. I like cried seeing issue 7. The fact that Jen Bartle took Planeta Fortuna that just existed in my daydreams, in that place before you're awake but you're still kind of asleep, like that's where I figured this out. She was able to like put that onto the page masterfully, like gorgeous, like the color schemes, like my writing was like beautiful space purples and pinks, right? She got it, right? She did it. Like, so there were so many moments with artists, especially a lot of the like woman artists, right, that jumped in. It was like they could capture her so well, and the moments on the ancestral plane too, just incredible. And that collaboration, like once I kind of got in the swing of things, that's when it felt like it was so much easier to kind of like maneuver and offer notes. Like most of the time I barely had any notes. Whatever magic people have that they can take what I've written and create it is beautiful. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Like I'm hooked. At first I was like literally just so terrified to take the Marvel gig because I'd never written a comic, and so I was like, I have no right to do this. Like, why should I should just say no. Like, that's ridiculous. I'm gonna make a fool of myself. You know what I mean? And just like all of this like doubt. And I don't know. And then I was like, whatever, right? Like, if you get an opportunity, you should take it, right? Like, look, Trump is the president. He never even held office before. You can do anything in this country. You know, like, if that person has given me one inspiration, what it is, that doesn't matter. Anything goes, right? Like, so, but now I'm in love. Like, now I'm just like, I've got a million comics in my head. I want to make them. I want to do it. Like, it's beautiful. It's a blessing. Like, yeah, I love it.
So has your process around comics? Did your process around comics change? I mean, did they give you help with like creating a comics script writing format, or like what?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, listen. trick, right, that I always use whenever I'm trying to learn something new, right? Like, you know, I didn't know how to write a short story in the beginning. I didn't know how to write a comic. I didn't know how to write scripts. I always ask people for templates. If you're someone that's asking me to write a script, I'm gonna say, what's the best script you ever got? Send that to me. And then I'm gonna use that, like, bless you. I'm gonna use that as a template, right? And so when I pitched to Marvel, Will Moss, who's excellent, by the way, was like, give me a pitch. And I was like, what does that mean? Send me your best ones. And he sent me like 3 really good ones. He sent me 3 of his favorite scripts. And so it's always like finding the model and then like putting my magic into the model, you know what I mean? And now I'm working on an original comic with Boom Studios, and I'm like in love with it. Like, I'm understanding the language of like panels, right? And that they have like a direction and like a flow, and that you can kind of do anything. I don't know, I feel like I've learned so much, and now I'm like learning how to like pace a story and like drop a tidbit in the beginning that she's not gonna bring back until the end, just to kind of like pull people. Like, I feel like I'm learning how to do it all over again, you know? It's really exciting. And the artist that I'm working with now, like, once all of the contract stuff is finalized, I want to learn, like, is there a way for me as a writer to write better for you as an artist? You know, like, is that a thing? Is there a language that I'm missing out because I'm kind of like self-taught, you know? Like, so I'm excited to like learn more.
By the way, people should be thinking about questions to ask Gabby. Okay. So one of the things I remember you talking about before that I found fascinating was how you think about your audience, right? And I'm sure that depends on the project you're doing. So, you know, your YA novel, Juliet Takes a Breath.
Oh yeah, look, that's the new Penguin cover, y'all.
Yeah, which has Christy C. Rhodes as the illustrator.
Yeah, Christy Rhodes.
It's amazing. So like when you think about audience, right, in a given project, you think about what the audience is going to be, and how does that influence the work?
Yo, for America, I didn't know what the hell was going on. I was like, I don't know who's gonna read this. I don't know what is going on, but I was like, well, what would I want to read? And I gotta be honest, a lot of times I'm my audience, right? Because there's not a lot of shit for me, right? Not a lot of stuff is like designed specifically for chubby dyks from the Bronx, you know what I'm saying? You know, it's not like I go to the movies and I'm like, oh, this movie stars me, it's for me. No, it's like, what do I want to hear, right? What is funny? Can things be funny? Can they be joyful? Can they bounce? Can they not bore me? You know what I mean? Like, can it not be about, wait, where am I going?
Audience of...
Oh yeah, and so there's my brain, right? So I'm just like writing for people who lose their way all the time. But with specifically this new project that I'm working on, I know I want it to be for like tween teenagers, like that like savvy 11 to that like I still read comics and I don't care 18. You know what I mean? Like, so for me that informs the fact that like the decisions have to come from the characters that are that age, right? So anything that I do with parents or adults, that has to kind of like happen with less real estate and be more impactful. And so the language that I use, am I speaking like how I would speak, or am I speaking how an adult thinks a teenager is gonna talk? You know what I mean? So it's like in like I said, I've picked up a few things, and so this next comic, I'm very aware of who I want the audience like to be and who I hope they are, and then at the same time remembering that like, I don't know, in a good relationship, right? Whether it's like mom, kid, homie, if I'm reading something that's really exciting to me and I tell you about it all the time, you're probably gonna wanna read it. And so how do I make sure that that person who's not the intended whatever audience also feels connected and pulled in, right? That's where underneath all the audience stuff is like, am I talking about real people? Am I talking about people that are like moving with love and like excited and have questions and are curious? Like, yeah, that's where I go with that.
Yeah, I mean, authenticity of character kind of comes across and engages people no matter who they are on some level, right?
For sure.
So what about, I mean, I know that when, diving into the Marvel Universe is a whole nother beast, right?
Yeah.
So did you get trolled? Did like all the stuff like that happen as well?
Is there a happy question after this? Lord, y'all, did you know that people are mean on the internet? Holy shit. Yo, you would have thought I was coming to steal everyone's children and gleefully throw them off cliffs or something, the way that people were coming for me, right? Like, there's a whole world of like, now it could be Russians, I don't know what's happening in the world, right? But there's a whole world of trolls that just came for me. Like, specifically, white men comic book fans. Specifically, like blogs like Diversity in Comics and like, you know, pseudo front, like would tear my work apart page by page and make videos that got like 250,000 views, like wild. People with 1 million comics were telling me that I'm like fat and I'm a dyke, and I'm like, I know, but why does it upset you so much? You know, like, you know, like try harder. You know what I'm saying? Like, right? Like, oh my God, I'm Latina. Wow, you know. But using these things to really like attack me, right? And the wild thing is that it wasn't just like picking on me online. It was like sending people to try to come to my events to harm me, putting my address, apartment number, phone number, mother's maiden name on the internet on a site saying, this is the person that we wanna dox. You should go, she's gonna be at the Strand in New York. Like, I had to file police reports. I had to get lawyers from Marvel and Disney, because you know Disney owns Marvel, to have my back. They were hacking my site, they were calling my phone. It was like something that really terrified me. And I had a whole team, thankfully, to rally, and not just fancy Marvel and Disney. Like, I texted my roommates that this was going on, that people put our number up and our address, and they came home right away. They brought friends. We had like a rally in the house, and just, you know, I was super scared. Like, I'm writing a comic about a Latina superhero. Like, why does that make you want to kill me? And so that was something where it was like, do I want to do this? Like, why would I want to do this, you know? But then I started going on tours to like just speak to students, right? Like LGBTQ youth advocacy work, joy work, all this stuff. And kids, oh my God, I'm 37. I'm about to be 37, y'all. So when I say kids, I mean like 23, right? These little adorable babies were coming up to me and like, I love America. Oh my God, you read America in my English 101 class? And I was like, what, you liked it? You don't want to kill me? And they were like, no, we hate those guys, you know? Yeah, so it was like, oh my God, it was like, okay. And then everywhere I went, there were like pockets of folks that like loved America. And so that's when I kind of just like settled into my root self, right? Settled into like my spirit with my family, with my creative family, and just was like, also stayed off of Twitter for like 1.5 years, like just cold turkey out. And was like, do I want to keep doing this? You know, like, do I want to keep telling stories? And then I was like, hell yeah, of course. And now I know what's coming for me, right? And now I've seen like the worst of it, right? Like the scariest thing that you're like scared that'll happen finally happens. And so now I'm like, okay, what next? You know, like I'm gonna protect myself as best as I can and tell stories. And Marvel is one of those entities that has such a ginormous fan base that the other side of the Marvel universe was so loving and kind and open. And there's like the young kids that are dressing up as America Chavez, and their grandmothers are, oh my God, y'all. Oh my God. This Dominican grandmother, okay? There's a cover that we did of America where she's in the Beyonce formation, right? Like she's got the hat, she's got the outfit. This Dominican grandma was dressed like that America Chavez. And I was like, ay, señora. It's so beautiful. You know, like I'll just keep doing it. I'll just keep doing it, you know what I mean? Like, they don't scare me anymore. And also like, also I'm just like, you know, that says more about you. And sometimes when I look back, I'm like, damn, y'all really obsessed about me so hard that you made videos in your little boring ass lives, every issue, talking about every panel and page. Like, yo, you want me to sign your copies? Like, what's up? Yeah, right? Like, I mean, you know, like, I'm not a fan of Kellyanne Conway, but I'm not writing her on the internet like, you're a gremlin from hell, you know? Like, I did that.
Alright, siempre pa'lante, for sure. Alright, so let's open it up to some questions from the audience. I think we got some questions for...
Easy transition.
I was going to ask you a dreadful question. We'll get there, for sure.
Oh, good.
How did the job at Marvel come about? Like, did they just ask you?
I should have asked that. That should have been my first question.
All right. What's your name again?
I'm Gaia.
Yes, Gaia. Oh my God, yes. Okay. So I wrote Juliet Takes a Breath. That came out in 2016. I had a publisher, but it was more like an indie print on demand. So marketing, promotion, all that stuff was like on me. I edited my own book, like that kind of deal, right? But that little book had wings, right? It had wings. Little indie gay blogs wrote about it. People of color blogs wrote about it. You know, my fan base, my community, right? Like the same type of people that where I was writing about their books, they write about mine. You know, that kind of community. And then Roxane Gay read my book. And she tweeted, like only like 4 tweets. And it was like, and then all of a sudden other people were writing about it. And somewhere along the line, oh, and this is a good note. This is a good note. A lot of white folks ask me, like, how can I be better, right? Like, that's a general question. How can I read more people of color? How can writers, how can I be a better ally? All this stuff. So Will Moss at Marvel is an editor. And he is like the, dad of your dreams. Like, he's a white guy with a beard. He wears the baby Bjorn, right? He's a feminist, okay? The dude speaks with the I statements, you know what I mean? Like, it's a fucking dream. And so, because here's what, they tasked him to do the America story. And for a lot of folks, especially men in power, that means, hey Bill, so we've got this Latina lesbian story. I think you should do the inks. Tommy, why don't you do the dialogue? Billy will do whatever else comes next. And it's like the same people get the same jobs to tell the same stories. And Will Moss is like on his I'm gonna be a better person trip. And so he was reading women of color, at the bare minimum, right? I'm not like he solved, sexism, right? I'm like, he read books. He read books by women of color, queer people, and me. And so he found Juliet Takes a Breath. And then that's when he reached out and was like, hey, I can't tell you too much, but would you ever want to write for Marvel? We loved your book. And so, I know. And that email came with like a lock and an access code, and I was like, is someone hacking my account? Like, what is happening? No, it was awesome. It was awesome, and so I was like, hell yeah, of course. And that's my mom. I think she had a heart attack and came back to life because it was like, my dreams. I mean, your dreams.
Anyone else here with a question?
This is sort of connected to that question, but I found out about Juliet Takes a Breath from Autostraddle, and I was wondering, how did you get it to Autostraddle in the first place?
Oh, okay. Oh my God, that's the way back. Okay, so if y'all don't know about Autostraddle, it's the #1 independently owned queer women's website, and I think it's been around going on maybe over a decade now. And so people, part of that question is also how did you even become a writer? And so Autostraddle was the first place that I wrote publicly. And so I started writing with them maybe in 2008 or something like that, when people were, when it was Jezebel was just coming out, Gawker was just coming out. It was the rise of the internet website with an attitude, you know what I mean? For news, entertainment, politics. And so I wrote for Autostraddle, and they're run by white lesbians, right? But again, it was one of those situations where they didn't hire me to be their Latina lesbian correspondent. You know what I mean? They were write whatever the hell you want. We support you. We love your voice. And so that freedom was lovely. And so they also do a camp for queer women and trans and non-binary folks. And so at Autostraddle camp, I got to like work with folks, build community, run writing workshops, like. So here was this like small group of folks and community, so that when the book finally came out, everyone was like, thank God, we know you've been writing it for like 3 years or so, whatever it was, you know. And so that was immediate support. Autostraddle was one of the first blogs to write, give love, offer links, review. Yeah.
And now it's coming out through Penguin. When does it happen?
Oh my gosh, okay. So speaking of a book that has wings, right? So this book, Penguin Random House, kind of like scooped me up out of the print on demand and is now republishing. It's coming out September 17th. And we're publishing in the United States, in the UK, and a Spanish version is coming out in January.
Nice.
Can you talk at all about your project at Boom Studios?
We'll just put the little beat.
Okay, what I can say about Boom is that I'm so excited. They do Lumberjanes. Y'all already know Boom, right? They do Goldie Vance, Scott Shaper. They're incredible, queer owned. Shannon is amazing.
You just did one.
Yeah. Oh my God, I did a little Lumberjanes story for them too. Basically, it's like a QTPOC teen adventure story that takes place in post-climate change America. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm like trying to reimagine like what does technology look like when it's open source and like queer kids of color are in charge? Like, can they turn butterfly wings into like solar panels for wheelchairs? Listen, I'm all in the imaginations. And I want my main characters to be chubby babes. I want like babes with disability. That's what we're doing. Like the number one thing that young people ask me and kids on the road is like, where are the kids with disabilities? Where are the kids that are like neurodivergent? I was gonna say neuroatypical, but that don't make sense. Neurodivergent, like where are the kids that are experiencing mental health issues and stuff? And so I really was trying to like listen and do that. And so it's gonna be a lot of fun. And I'm doing a little spin on like how everybody's like a YouTuber and has a channel. So how do you make that work when there's no internet?
Can you say the artists you're working with or not yet?
Not yet.
Okay, not yet.
Oh my God, but they're awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, like, it seems like you've got all this great stuff happening, which is like super awesome, but are there ever any points where you find yourself being scooped up as like the token diversity, like just kind of like icon, and how do you find that?
Ooh.
Or how do you take that chance to flip the script and be like, let's make this about diversity and inclusion, as opposed to just like, you know, you bring me in as this brown person, but you like ignore everything I say just because you have your brown person to put on the show.
Well, one, that is like a constant work, right? Like I'm always trying to like navigate my own biases, right? Light skin, Latino, able-bodied, all that stuff, bias, right? And I think what I'm trying to also remember is that like when I move in these spaces, like who is coming with me and who am I like kind of offering support to, right? And guidance and mentoring. And so that's always like part of what I'm doing. And so when folks come to me now, I mean, at first I tell everybody this, get your money, yo, because nobody else is gonna put food on your table and pay for your Metro card. I don't know what it's called here in the Bay. You know, like you kind of have to take what you can to like feed yourself sometimes, right? But like when you have more wiggle room, I feel very comfortable saying no now. I had this big opportunity come up, and everyone's always gonna tell you it's a big opportunity because they want you to do some shit, you know what I mean? So you also get really good at kind of sniffing out like what is really big, you know? And this is gonna sound a little gross, but like also the celebrity people that want to do shit, like they also put a lot of pressure, and like that is not where my energy goes, right? Like, so this opportunity I got was somebody with like a name trying to get me to be part of something. And when I asked, well, where are the black women, where are the trans women, where are the other people that aren't me, you know what I mean? It was like, we'll get back to you on that. You know what I mean? And then at the same time, I gotta do my work, right? Like, I don't get to shut out white Latinos, beige, brown Latinos. That's my work to push, right? So even offering names and saying, hey, let's work together, let's do this. And when people are still hesitant, that's when I just can't really fuck with you. Like, what are you actually doing? I can't be your representation, yo. Like, I'm not enough. And two, like, let's really make a commitment out here as creators of color to be rooted in like either working with or supporting the works already happening with Black women, with trans women, with, you know, non-binary folks. You know what I'm saying? Like, so for me and that's also why I'm really happy to be kind of like going from Marvel to Boom, because I feel like it kind of centers me more in my community, you know? And I also, in that space, right, there's room if I wanna like, and I plan to bring in other creators. And now I trust Shannon, right? I'm like, I know her. I know you're a white homie and you're doing your work, but I see you doing your work, so I feel comfortable navigating in this way. Yeah, I'm trying, man. I want to, and I have good, big plans. And one of the things also, right, with this new comic for Boom, I have 2 slots, one for an up-and-coming writer of color and one from a writer of color from a different genre. Because I want it to always be like, you know, like what Adrienne Marie Brown's Pleasure Activism, it's like a community of folks in that book. She's got essays from other people in that book. And so I kind of want to always have my work feel like that too. Yeah, you had a question. Thank you.
So like referring to what you said, some of your comics include people with disabilities. They also include chubby women. And my question is, how do you feel about this industry where chubby women were not represented as much as we should, and if we are, we're represented in the wrong way? And I'm pointing to Big Bertha.
Who's that?
You don't want to know.
Okay, okay.
Don't look her up.
Yeah, it's so hilarious sometimes, and it's not, because it's like everybody wants to like. Sorry, I feel like everybody wants to fuck a fat person, but nobody wants to own up and stand up and be like, hell yeah, I'm here, I love this body, I want this body, right? Like, there's so much secret desire and hidden desire and shame around bodies, right? Especially fat babes, fat butches, fat dykes, right? Everyone's just like, God, people like have a malfunction. Oh my God, relax, right? Like, it's just a girl. I just have short hair. Oh my God, I didn't mean to freak you out. And with fat bodies, right? Fat bodies are usually like the butt of the joke, right? Or the fat body is like the comic relief, or like the sea witch, which I love, by the way. Ursula is better always be fat, because only a fat bitch could command the sea like that, you know what I'm saying? But I feel like, my people are chubby ass people, right? Like, I look at my grandma's photos and I'm like, she didn't even have high fructose corn syrup and she was thick. You know what I'm saying? She's just, and so part of me is like, we gotta get over it, right? Like, I just kicked back some artwork today and I was like, no, like, this main character has to be fat and bouncy and still look like she could climb a fence and, run away. Right? Maybe she runs slow, but she still be able to run. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, cause I sent the directive for her to be chubby, but she came back kind of just looking like a regular kid with like a little baby fat, right? And I'm like, you gotta do better, right? You gotta do better, right? Because fat kids, you don't look at them sometimes in your real, like for me, when I'm still a fat kid, but I know when I was a fat kid, people would look at me and be like, damn, that's a fat kid. And that's the experience, right? That is not, you can't hide that. It's not like, whatever, a couple of little pounds here. It's like, you're a fat kid, and that impact has to be felt in the work that we do, in the art that I make, and I didn't really get to push that envelope in America Chavez, and so that's why I want to definitely do that in the, yeah.
I made this.
Yes.
That body.
Yes.
Well,
thank you.
I think a final question. All right, I got a final question if nobody else does. So we talk about joy, right? Sorry.
I just want to ask, what as a Latinx writer and someone who soy cubano, so
How you doing?
I'm just curious to know, like, what's something you would want to encourage up and coming comic book artists and writers, and what are some things you would, you know, just to kind of pass based on your experience and also your unique experience as a queer woman of color and Latinx and all that. What would you want to pass on, just as like advice and stuff like that? So that's a big question.
No, that's a good question. I mean, I wish this was also like the other way around, because I feel like I could sit and like learn from all of you, you know what I mean? Because y'all have so much experience and like so much knowledge on this as well. I think what I always try to tell folks is like, finish your story. Like if you have an idea, finish the thing, because then you have a thing to like show other people, right? Like I never thought that Juliet Takes a Breath would make it out of my mom's basement, but like I finished it, you know what I mean? So there's like that element. And what I'm telling myself now, especially when I get frustrated writing, is like, are you having fun? Are you having fun? Like, are you enjoying this? Because this should be really fun, and it should be exciting, and not fun in like a flippant, easy way, but like fun when you're really in that wave of your art and your creativity, and that you love the story that you want to tell. Yeah, that's what I remind myself. And whenever it doesn't feel like that, I flip to another medium or genre, right? Like I want to learn about, like I'm trying to write a world post the immediacy of technology that we have right now. So what did I do the other night? I built a radio. Right? Like I burned myself soldering, right? Like it didn't get built, we're still working on it, but I was like, I had a boo-boo. But it's like, you know, right there, I'm a nerd now. But it's like, you know, let your brain rest when you're feeling frustrated, but also do some other thing, like use clay, use Legos, use anything else to play and problem solve with the story in your mind, you know? But yeah, if you're not having fun and it's something that's like really killing you, and I know fun is a little different, like if you're telling memoir, it is sometimes really hard to have fun with memoir, because that is you like literally like pulling out the roots inside of you to show other people. So, but wherever there's fun in that and there's peace in that, to always like try to find it. Yeah, there you go.
I guess so. Just to follow up on that, you so much of what you talk about with your work is this idea of joy, and there's so many opportunities for rage right now, and rage feels like a really guiding force. With like, there's so many things to be angry about, right? Like, but do you feel like joy is the more powerful force? I don't know how to say this without it sounding wicked cheesy, but like. Talk to me about joy.
Listen, there is no joy without like rage. There is no joy that is devoid of pain. There is no joy that insulates you from the outside world, right? And so when I talk about joy, especially when I talk to queer kids of color, it is about cultivating a healing, radical, like revolutionary joy that inspects and reckons with the wrongs being committed, that forces people and culture and society to like hold itself accountable and right those wrongs. And there's also like the joy of being in community with each other and being able to like hold that grief and that pain and remember that we are just so fantastic. Like for me, and when I say fantastic, I mean for me that means rooting in what does it mean to be Puerto Rican? Like what do I know about myself? Like that means going to my tia's house and eating the food that she makes. That means like this Christmas planning my like first trip to Puerto Rico in like 25 years so that I can finally really be like, yeah, Latinx, but like Puerto Rican and not just from the Bronx, like really finding those roots, you know what I mean? And so that is joyful. That is like, if I don't find joy, if I don't cultivate joy, how can I survive this? I know I also can't do it on my own every single day. That is like, people be like, oh, love yourself. How? You know, how? That's really freaking hard every day. So it's like, if I'm cultivating joy and you are in a rage, then I can offer that to you, right? And so you can take that, and when the person next to you, when they are in their rage, you can offer them that joy. So yeah.
Thank you.